Hi everyone, this is Nicole Spohr and welcome to another video. Today I am sharing a couple of tall and skinny window dressing cards featuring the brand new July release from Mama Elephant Slim Window Dressing Dies. We're also going to be incorporating My Pet Kitties, which is new for June, I believe, and then the My Pet Puppies was also released fairly recently, and I just thought it would be so cute to create these adorable pet scene cards. Tall and skinny cards are all the rage right now, and Mama Elephant really came out with some incredible dies. There's also a Slim City set for creating all kinds of different cityscape types of scenes as well. So lots and lots of options, and I'll be sharing a video with that soon. From the smallest rectangle panel from the Slim Window Dressing set, I did die cut that from some smooth white cardstock, and I am taking the Lawn Fawn brick stencil and a little Simon Says stamp ink in stone, and I'm applying this to the panel to create my brick background for the house or apartment building, whatever you want to call it. You can see that because this panel is taller than this 6x6 stencil, I need to piece it together and move my way down to cover the whole stencil. So it's really important here to kind of line it back up before you ink again so that you get some consistent stenciling all the way through this really fun panel. So we're going to apply that. I am doing kind of a messy stencil is what I call it, where I maybe am not covering everything completely. Some places are darker, some are lighter. That is very much on purpose. I want it to definitely resemble real bricks, and I love the size of the Lawn Fawn brick stencil. So that is another fairly new product as well that really works with all of your different card making, die cutting, stamping, all of the great things. So here are the components of the Slim Window Dressing. We get the big background scallop rectangle, the skinny rectangle. We get all three components for the window. You can use them together, you can use them apart. There's lots of ways to configure those. We have the window box, we have the flower base, we have the layering flowers, we've got some butterflies, and then we have two border dies that create the grass there. I only used one of them, but those can be used with some of the other Slim die collections, creative cuts as well. So you're definitely not limited to just this style, and it's long. So yes, I'm creating tall and skinny today, but let's think we're doing kind of short and long cards instead. Let's flip it on its side. It's going to completely go across the edge there. So I love that. I am going to ink up the edges of my grass now with a little Simon Says stamp green apple cardstock using a blender brush, just to give a little depth and dimension to the edge of my grass. I think when this ink is wet, it's a little bit wetter. Dye ink is going to kind of slightly absorb into the cardstock and lighten a little bit. If I was doing this again, because I didn't really notice it until I was finished with the card, I would probably use a darker ink, or even maybe use an oxide ink or something, because I don't think it held up very good against this color of cardstock. I mention that because you're going to notice in the finished cards, you really aren't going to see that dimension that I was hoping to get here. And I think it's important to mention when things maybe don't go exactly as planned. I did not want to pull my whole card apart, and I didn't think it was that big of a deal for the finished card, so I did not redo that. Then I am going to assemble the windows. I would highly recommend, however, that if you're going to tuck anything back behind the windows, which is kind of the whole key to this card here, we're going to tuck some pets back behind there, to go ahead and do that. So stamp and color and die cut those, and then assemble those as you're going. I assembled one of the windows, and then I was really afraid I wasn't going to be able to tuck my kitty, the sleeping kitty and the little mouse, back behind there. I still was able to, thank goodness. I didn't have to peel apart anything, but I really recommend probably having those things done first before you assemble that. To make the curtains really pop, to me, I felt like they needed a pattern. You could definitely stamp a pattern if you have some small enough background pattern stamps. There's not a ton of those out there. There are some kind of small little texture type of stamps. I think those would work great. Or pattern paper is quick and easy. This is the My Favorite Things Positively Peppy 6x6 paper pad. And I die cut that curtain layer from that, and I absolutely love this little pattern for something small like these curtains because it's perfect. I was really conscious of picking a pattern that had a small enough design that it was going to work for this. There's also a green and white plaid that I think would be really cute. There is a yellow with little plus signs design, and kind of depending on what color excuse me, you're going to do for the rest of the card, maybe if you change up your background. Some of the others might work as well. There's some really pretty rainbows. There's just a lot of white background to any of those rainbow patterns, and so that's kind of why I opted not to use those. I wanted something with a little bit more substance, and the plaid works really great for that. We're going to combine two sentiments for this card. Up at the top of my background panel, we're going to stamp "Oh Meow, It's Your Birthday" from My Pet Kitties. We're going to stamp that with some Simon Says Stamp black dye ink. That little open space at the top of the card, at the top of this house or building, is really a great little spot for sentiments. We're going to do the same thing for our second card, but just change up the sentiments to work with the puppy images. And then along the bottom grass edge, we're going to stamp an inside birthday message using some clear embossing ink and heat embossing with white embossing powder right along that bottom edge. So I chose the sentiment, "Know that I'm thinking of you and wishing you a wonderful birthday." Something I want to mention, I know I say this quite a bit, but I like to tell you when things don't go exactly right. I forgot that my back panel for the grass. So when I'm doing borders, I like to do two so you can tuck things in between them. In this case, the kitties or the puppies. My back panel wasn't quite long enough to go all the way to the bottom of this rectangle. And so it's a little short, and that doesn't matter because you can't see it, but when I stamped on it, it caused my stamping to not stamp well. And I did end up having to pull this whole thing off, discard it, re-die cut, re-ink, re-stamp the whole thing. Just because it wasn't stamping clearly, I couldn't get that top line of text. That top line of text was right where the cardstock kind of overlapped behind it. So if that cardstock back behind had gone all the way down, I think it would have stamped fine. Because it didn't, I just stamped it by itself before adhering to the cardstock. I like to be fully transparent with you guys when things don't go exactly right, so that hopefully you don't run into those same obstacles. We are going to assemble our background. Now, there isn't another rectangle panel a little bit bigger than this one. This actually measures 3 inches by 8 is what I trimmed my white cardstock to, and matted the brick piece to that, and then matted the whole thing to our scallop panel background. So I felt like it needed matted a little bit. I wanted that definition from the brick to the scallop to have a little break. I've stamped my images from My Pet Kitties on smooth white cardstock using Hero Art's intensified black ink, and we're going to color in with Copic markers. Now, down in the bottom left corner of the screen, I have listed the stamps that I'm using and the colors of Copic markers I'm using for easy reference. I'm also going to list those out on the blog post that coordinates with this video. So if at any time you're wondering what color combination I have used for different parts of coloring in these images, you can find that information there. So we got a little orange tabby kitty here sleeping. The insides of his ears are R00. And then we're going to move on to a little black kitty. I think I've mentioned it in another fairly recent video, but my oldest son kind of moved into his own apartment and stuff about April, I believe. So his first fully on his own place, and he's been really wanting a pet for a while. And he just adopted a little black kitten who is just darling. He's very, very fun, and my son is very excited. So kind of working with these cat images has really been fun since we have a new kitten in the family to love. I'm using some warm gray markers here. Warm gray 8, 6, 5, and R00. That R00 is for the insides of the ears. If it's a little too harsh pink, which I usually find it is a little too harsh pink for any of these critters, whether it be the puppies or the kitties, I will take a lightish gray marker, or even in this case, I kind of took a dark one, I think that warm gray 5, and I just kind of flick in a little bit of that and then blend it back out with R00, and it will mute that pink enough that it just kind of dulls it and gives it a little bit more of a natural feel. Our mice are going to be colored with E43 and E44. And then a little R00 for the insides of their ears as well. I normally don't say mice are cute. However, these little mice images are really fun. I used both of these when I created some other cards with New Mama Elephant June release product here. I'll link to one of those videos at the end of this one. And I used both of them because I think they're so cute and they're a great addition to all kinds of cards. Just really fun. And of course, they work really well with the kitten images. So for our next kitty, we're going to do a little gray kitty. And unfortunately, both my warm gray 00 and warm gray 1 markers needed refilled. So I did have to take a little time out to go refill those because the tip is super, super dry. But I am using warm gray 00, 1, 3, and I think even maybe a little 5, I'm not sure. And then R24 and 29 for the yarn ball and the little project this kitty is knitting. How much fun is that? I think a lot of that gets covered up in the window dressing of this card, but it's still a super fun little image. So we're just gonna shade him out really nice. I did add a little dot detail to my kittens. I haven't shared as many Copic colored projects for a while. I have had many requests to share more of them. I know a lot of you have Copics and you like to see new ideas with them. And so this is something I've done for a long time, adding that little dot detail to critters. And so I did quite a bit of that today, and it was really fun to kind of revisit my Copics. Even with this layering piece, and I do want to talk about, there's a difference between the layering pieces for this card and a layering piece for the Puppies card. I actually created everything for the My Pet Kitties card first, and of course I had not used these components before. This was the first time. I thought everything was going to layer size-wise exactly, meaning the flower layering pieces and the window box. Well, you're going to see the window box is actually slightly smaller. It's almost kind of matted on the layering piece. The flowers are going to be the same way. I left it because it did not bother me that much. However, I'm going to show you how to do it on the second card, where I actually die cut the layering piece, the background piece, from white cardstock, and I'm going to add, I'm just going to color in the greenery for that, so that the outline of the window box and the flowers is actually white. Now I had to trim away a couple of the flowers on both cards for the sleeping puppy or the sleeping kitty, because I didn't want the flowers covering up their sweet little face. And you can see that it works perfectly fine. I just took my scissors, snipped along the edge, and got rid of the couple of the flowers here in the window box, added some shading with Simon Says Stamp khaki ink to that wood grain neutrals Lawn Fawn cardstock I used. It has a great texture, so it's going to hold that ink nice. I even went in with my E43 and E44 and added extra dimension to the window box to give it a little bit more shading. So there's lots of things you can do here to add finishing details. Another thing I want to note is all of the critters' eyes and noses, if they're open and not sleeping, I went over them with a black glaze pen to really make them pop. So in the finished cards, you're going to see that they have a glazy texture to them, and then I've added some little white pin detail here and there if I felt like it. I did more of that on the kittens card than I did on the puppies, but either way is just fine. Once we have our second window, I opted to do 2 windows. If you wanted to, and if your sentiment allowed it, or maybe you don't want to put a sentiment on the front of the card, you could you could fit 3 windows on this panel if you wanted to. I did die cut the flowers from lots of colors of cardstock. I have lots of leftover. Even after creating 2 cards, I have lots of leftover I can use for something else. I have leftover butterflies as well. I cut those from 3 different colors just so I would have a nice variety. And you might notice that I went with rainbow color for my accents. So the flowers have pretty much everything represented. And then through the butterflies, we've got the pinks and red and orange and yellow and green of the greenery. And then our blues and purple are in the butterflies. I'm using some tweezers to kind of help position my cute little mouse back there behind the sleeping kitty. He's popping up to say hi. And then, of course, the kitten running along the base of the card down there in between the borders with the mouse chasing him. And the kitten is chasing these little butterflies that are so cute. I opted to use the die-cut butterflies from the slim window dressing, but there is some butterfly images from my pet kitties. So if you wanted to stamp and color some instead, that would be a fun option. I even added a little white pin detail to the butterflies on this card. And then some little white pin detail to cheeks and things like that. Now some of the flowers had an open spot, so I used Nouveau Crystal drops in apple green to finish off the centers of those. We're going to pop our panel in place on a 3.5 by 8.5 inch card base, and look at that fun little design. I love the tall and skinny look. Let's go ahead and stamp and color our puppies. Everything else about the construction of the card is basically the same. I did want to share some of the coloring here, especially for the little dachshund. I thought it turned out so cute. So I'm using warm gray 8 and 6 and then E17. And just by blending that in to the darker colors, and I did go over it a little bit, I thought I got a really great color combination. That was just complete trial and error. I haven't colored one in quite some time, and so I just kind of played around with these 3 markers. But I think the puppy images are so, so cute. We're going to move on to our next little puppy here. He's going to be, I want him to be white, but we of course want the shading so he has a little bit of texture with a little black eye patch. So we're using some really light warm grays in warm gray 0013. I think I even maybe pulled in a little 6 for the eye, and we're just going to add our coloring and all of our shading here. It will kind of fade. It's a tiny bit as the markers are absorbed and dry. And then I'm going to add that little dot detail that I was talking about. I also saved blending out my first puppy. I didn't want to oversaturate the paper, and so I went ahead and just moved on to the second dog, colored him in, and then went back and shaded out the first one. For my little Frenchie here, I am using E40, 43, and 44 with R00 for the insides of the ear. That's going to be the same throughout, just like for the kitties. And I started light, and I just gradually built up my color a little bit, and then we'll add a little texture and things. And speaking of puppies, mine, every time I do a voiceover, he wants in my lap. I don't know if he thinks I'm talking to him or what, but so he's going to be with us, hopefully being quiet. These images are so darling. I think for all of us pet lovers out there, these are really, really fun. Next, we're going to do kind of dark brown and light brown. So a lot of the same colors we just used, but we're going to pull in E47 as well, and a lot more of E44 for the ears and for around the nose area. And then we're just going to kind of lightly blend out the rest. This is our little sleeping puppy. And I do like that there's a sleeping puppy in the My Pet Puppies, and then in My Pet Kitties there's a sleeping kitten. They could face each other, which I think would be fun to do on another card sometime. We have one little Chihuahua left, and we are going to color him with E51, 53, 55, and 57. Again, darling, darling little image. I think these are all so much fun. We're going to go ahead then and take the coordinating dies, the My Pet Puppies dies, tape them in place, roll this through the machine. I did roll it through with one pass of the machine. I like to hold them down in place with a little repositionable tape as I'm die cutting them so they don't shift, and that way I can get these die cut with just one pass. Let's assemble the windows. I went ahead and already assembled the background. I've got all my layers just like the first card. The window layers are exactly the same. I wizened up though here, and we're actually going to do the window frame over our curtain first, and then we're going to figure out where our images are going to go. And this is a little bit more important on this one, just because I have two dogs that I want to put in the upper window, and I want to make sure that the lines of the window aren't going through their eyes. It can go through part of their face, I'm fine with that, but I don't ever want the windows to be covering up the eyes at all. And so I wanted to make sure that those hit those bottom two panels of the window frame. And I'm going to play around with that a little bit, and once I have it where I want it to go, I can go ahead and adhere the curtain panel to the background panel. I did add the little rough stamp sentiment here using some Simon Says Stamp khaki ink. I'm going to stamp that off on a scrap piece of paper a couple times first, and I thought that would be fun, like the dogs are sitting at the window barking, since that seems to be what they do. I like to also, I'm using this really thin 1/8 inch double-sided adhesive to adhere these small pieces. It works great around the edge of these panels, but it can be tricky to remove. If you take the tip of a piercing tool, this is the Spellbinders tool-in-one that I'm using, you can easily lift that up and remove your tape with, or the backing paper off your tape with no problem. I highly recommend that. Black gel pen for the eyes and noses, of course. We're going to let that dry, and then we'll go back in with a white pen and add in our detail. So on that first card, remember how I was talking about layering the window box? These are the white panels that I'm just customizing with my Copic markers so that I get a white outline instead of green. It's not super bad, and I don't really mind it on the first card, but I do think I prefer the white background a little bit, so that's just another little note that I wanted to tell you guys about, or a little tip, I guess. And it was easy to just color in the stems and the leaves, and then we're going to layer in our flowers and the window box. Just like the first card, I am going to have to snip away one of the flowers. You can snip away a couple if you need to, just depending on what images you use and if it bothers you. I didn't mind it slightly covering these two guys, but the sleeping puppy, I did remove one of the flowers where I removed two on the kittens card. And you're going to see that here. I'm working with the placement, trying to get that exactly right, and once I'm happy with it, I can go ahead and adhere that to my card. We're going to add our window box just like we did for the upper window. So a little YG21 and YG17. Really, really fast coloring. I did not spend tons of time on that. Just a little bit to get some color down on there. And then add in our layering pieces. And add in our window box. And layer on our flowers. And the flowers add such a great pop of color to these designs. Our color really comes from our flowers, the curtain panels, and then the grass along the bottom edge, and of course the cute little butterflies. The sentiments from this card are both from My Pet Puppies. So there's one here up at the top that says Hello Human, and then along the grass border, I stamped No Matter What, Best Pals Are Forever. We're going to finish with the Nouveau Crystal Drops. Again, in the center of our flowers, we're going to make sure that the eyes all have some nice black glaze pen, some little white highlight detail, and our cards featuring tall and skinny window dressing cards using new Mama Elephant Creative Cuts dies are all finished. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video showcasing more ways to create tall and skinny cards. The supplies I used to create these cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Mama Elephant stamps and dies that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell to never miss a new card making video. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.